Welcome to today's episode with Talk with Tech Leaders. My name is Kasim Asgar from Kudos Recruitment. Today's guest is somebody who I've known for quite a while, since the start of my recruitment career in .NET. He's someone who I've recruited for, someone who has delivered talks at our .NET meetup, is a mentor, and also gives a lot of value back in the community with a dev meetup himself. So thank you for joining me today, Mike.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Brilliant. And I appreciate I gave you a small intro, but if you want to sort of just give a short introduction to yourself as well, just for everyone who's watching.
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Dent. I work at a company called Waterstones. We're a digital consultancy. My job title is Head of Digital Solutions, which I guess if you're in a product team means more sort of Head of Engineering, Software Manager type role. My team consult on developer productivity. We build software products. We augment development teams. But Waterstone's bigger than that. We get involved with sort of low code, no code, cybersecurity, data and AI, and everything in between. That's me.
Brilliant. And how long have you been in the industry, would you say?
Oh man, that's depressing. Probably 15, 20 years, something like that. So it's getting on for 20 years now.
And do you remember at what age you took an interest in software development and maybe saw it as a career path that you wanted to go down?
Yeah, two different questions, I think. I think first time I was tinkering with, software development. I don't know whether we called it back there. I was 8. I had an Amstrad CPC. And I wrote a blackjack game. Didn't know what blackjack was. Wrote a blackjack game in BASIC.
Right.
And tried to record it on a cassette tape and tried to run it. Built it overnight, and that was probably the first time I wrote any code, and so I got the bug from there.
Yeah. So at 8 years old, you did that.
Yeah, I was probably 8, 9, something like that. Just read it because the programming manual, they came in a manual back then. You didn't have the internet, obviously. They just came like there was a book, and this is how you write code. And so there was programs in between there. So
that's what I was going to ask. Why blackjack then at that age? Because
because that was all that was in the manual. There wasn't really any other. It was probably the simplest example that was in the book. There was some like Pong and whatever. Yeah. It didn't work. Compiled it, ran it, didn't work. But how would I know that it didn't work? Because I can't play blackjack at 8. So
no, absolutely. And could you talk us a little bit about your journey into getting into software development? Because I appreciate there's, I guess especially nowadays, there's quite a few different paths you can take to get into software development as a career. So what was your path that you took?
Yeah, I didn't really know that I wanted a career in software development. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. But I guess from that age, I knew I enjoyed like tinkering with computers and that sort of thing. Later on, it was like QBasic and Microsoft QBasic, and my cousin sort of picked this up and sort of taught me how to program in that. Never really thought about it sort of career wise. I just knew I enjoyed it. What I enjoyed learning about was the universe and stars and astronomy, and so I did a degree in astrophysics.
Right.
Not planning on being an astrophysicist at all, but just because it was something I enjoyed. But I also enjoyed doing programming, and I guess I chose modules during my astrophysics degree that were programming based. So modules, maths, I wasn't great, but the computer science module I got 93%. So I knew that that was the sort of thing that I was going to do, and then I did a master's in PC interfacing, which is basically controlling instruments and that sort of thing.
Right.
Still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that it was something in instrumentation I really enjoyed, like the instrumentation, teaching other instruments what to do and that sort of thing. We built a cosmic ray detector from scratch.
Right.
So that was pretty fun. And basically, what I did was there was a sort of equivalent of a Yellow Pages for engineering companies in Teesside.
Right.
I don't know whether you remember the Yellow Pages.
No, I do. Yeah, no, I certainly do. Yeah.
And it was it was a book this thick. and I went from A to Z, sending my CV off
Right.
to all of these companies, all of the engineering companies in the northeast. I think it was wider than the Teesside. Got loads of rejections. Got loads of silence. Some rejections. Got to a company called Pearson Harper. Got to a company called Pearson Harper. They invited me in, said, what can you program in, that sort of thing. They happened to program in VB.NET at the time, which was like I hadn't written any C#. C# was a newish thing back then. Sort of started working in sort of the SharePoint when SharePoint was like, I don't know, SharePoint 2003 or whatever it was. Started being a thing, and long story short, I worked closely with big clients like BP and that sort of thing, stakeholders from there, and then just got the bug. Just enjoyed, and I was like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. There's more to that. Yeah. There's more to that. I could go, do a longer thing, but that was at the point where I knew I wanted to be a software developer. But then there's another story about like my transition from doing software development to managing people and then managing managers and stuff.
Yeah. So from then, is that when? So how long did you work at Pearson Harper, and then was it from there you went to Tracecore? But was there an in between as well?
Yeah, so I had a brief spell. So so I worked at Pearson Harper probably for probably 6 years. I can't. Yeah. Probably about 6 years. It was a decent amount of time, and then went on to a company called Johnson Matthey, who were a FTSE 100 company at the time. I did some SharePoint development and that sort of thing. It was canny. Met some really nice people. Still a developer, still an individual contributor, and Johnson Matthey owned a company called Tracecore, and that was really sort of my transformative years. And that's so I applied for a job that was management role, but it was 80% development. It's like, oh yeah, the people thing, I can probably do that. That'll get in the way of me coding, but it's fine. Yeah. And I guess during that, very long story short, during that time, I really found my passion for growing other people and coaching other people and developing other people, and those not instant gratification of coding and seeing something, building it and getting in front of people, that long delayed gratification of people's development over a long period of time. That's when I got the bug. So I built the team from, I don't know, there was probably one permanent staff when I started at Tracecore, to when I left. There was about 10, maybe 12 by the time I left. Yeah. And I really grew that from we control instruments. Like these instruments are really interesting. Nucleonic instrumentation, radiation monitors, underwater CT scanners, robots. It's really quite cool what they did, but we grew it from sort of that desktop, like interfacey controlling instruments to really cloud first, web-based applications, that sort of thing. So that was really interesting time. But really, what I really enjoyed was growing the people and growing the team.
Yeah. So typically in recruitment, I mean, there's probably more paths than this, but usually you either see people that progress to wanting to manage people or people that want to continue down the technical route. So, I mean, I presume, but correct me if I'm wrong here, when you're at the start of your career, you maybe enjoyed the technical side quite a lot. What stage did you think or move towards management? Was it based on an opportunity, or was it maybe doing a little bit of mentoring in your team? How did that sort of transition happen for you?
Yeah, like I say, it happened by accident when I applied for a role at Tracecore, and I saw that there was that management role. I didn't really think much of it. Like I said, 2 developers. I can manage 2 developers. That's fine. That'll be fine. And by the way, some developers get into management not wanting to get into management, but they only see that as the only progression path, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So yeah, I guess it was that. I guess the time that it was cemented was when I promoted one of the developers that had into a management role, because I could see a lot of potential in their people building skills. There's a long story there, but I guess I have no regrets, and that's one of my proudest moments of. I guess it wasn't a moment, but it's my proudest achievements, I guess. One of the things that I'm most happy about helping that person develop into someone who is thriving, who is a thriving manager and does give back to the team, and that knock-on effect. That's what I live for, is almost that ripple effect of like the little things that you help out with, and that's why I do so much mentoring. Is like actually, the volume of people that you help, that has a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
After that, does that answer your question?
yeah, no, definitely. I think I know the gentleman you're talking about as well.
Yeah.
So you talk about mentoring there. So when it comes to mentoring, what sort of I know you've touched on it a little bit there, but what sort of values do you have when it comes to mentoring, and do you have maybe a purpose as well? So in your mind, in terms of like why you do it and what you enjoy about doing it.
Yeah, my and we'll talk about purpose in a little bit, I guess. But my purpose is to empower myself to empower other people. My purpose is to help other people deliver great things as their best possible selves. And I'm really clear on that purpose and who I want to be and who I want to show up as. So the more I get exposed to that, the better. And it's interesting that I love seeing other people deliver stuff. It's not me delivering the thing. It's not that's it's always helping. It's always about helping other people. And so the reason that I do that mentoring is to be able to fulfill my purpose as much as I possibly can. So I can do it in work and I do it in my home time, and that's just who I am. And I turn up as that thread that goes through my my personal life, my work life. That's just who I want to be, and I need to train myself, and I need to coach myself, and I need to learn myself about how better to deliver that.
Yeah. So you're still continuously looking to improve on that and develop your skills in those areas as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I do plenty of coaching courses and read, coaching books, and I've got my level 5 coaching and mentoring certificate. I'm looking forward to a course at the end of this year as well. And so yeah, I'm constantly, and I'm also teaching other people about good coaching questions, and so my management style is more of a coaching approach.
Yeah.
And teaching people the value of that.
Yeah. I know when we did our prep call, you mentioned mentoring people. Is it in other countries quite far away as well?
Yeah, so there's a platform called ADP List that is about helping product teams and people who want to get into the product industry. So there's designers in there, there's software engineers, there's CTOs and things like that. My mentoring's taken me to sort of Iran, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, UK, obviously, the US. And so you get to meet lots of people from lots of different backgrounds with lots of different challenges and problems and cultures, and it's really interesting learning about new people, new challenges.
Yeah, definitely, and it's great that you're able to have that reach from here, based in the northeast of England, and you're reaching out to other areas of the world with that. So that's great. How do you, so we can talk about your current team at Waterston's, if that's okay. So how do you sort of approach team building and fostering a positive team culture within your development team?
Yeah, I think we could look at Waterston's, and I get, it's really hard to convince someone that how good a culture is when you're on that side. But I think Waterston's are pretty unique in that in their culture is very safe and very rewarding and very people first, and that's not typical. So I think team building in general, my short answer is it depends, and it depends on the culture of the organization that you're in as to what actual powers you've got and what how you can successfully create that culture. So outside of the usual, find a common goal and find a common purpose and all that sort of thing, that's pretty universal. You start by listening to individuals, and it seems pretty common sense, but the worst thing that you can do, and I've seen this, is leaders turn up to a new team and go, I know exactly how to solve all these. I know there's all these problems. I know how to solve them. This is my 3-step plan for solving all the problems. Well, you don't know because you've not met us. You've not talked to us. That's the worst possible you can do to erode trust. Start by listening to individuals, and we talked about values and purpose, and something that not everybody likes this, but something that I start with is about finding what people's values are, because actually most of the time people don't know. People don't really know why they're why they enjoy the things that they do, and why they're attracted to certain sort of career paths and companies and whatever. Is talk about the values and the impact that they want to have and their purpose, and their strengths and what gives them joy. What moments do you get lost in flow? Those moments, especially in programming, where you get into a problem and you code in a way, and it's like next thing you know, it's 6 hours later, and you're like, oh wow, where's the time going? What gets you into that state? And I love talking to people about those moments and what brings them those moments. And I guess the other thing is talking about psychological safety. So how psychologically safe the team are. Like, do they feel like they can challenge each other in a safe environment? Do they feel like their opinions are heard? Do they talk in a pressurized environment or whatever? How do they interact, and do they feel that there's like these external pressures of the organization? Because different organizations have very, very different cultures. Like, do they feel they can speak up, and do they feel they can speak their mind, and do they feel, most importantly for me, do they feel they can turn up as their best possible self?
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds really good. And we touched on this, I think, a little bit earlier, but could you share any sort of success stories you've had with developers who have then ended up sort of progressing through their career quite rapidly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we touched on an example before. I think in general, like the secret sauce is those success stories have happened. There's been more than one.
Yeah.
Thankfully, is when I've believed in someone to execute something potentially career advancing that you can do yourself, but actually giving it over to someone else and trusting them to do that. But not only that, like letting them do it their own way. And that's one of the best gifts that you can give someone. It's like is knowing that you can do something, knowing that you're going to ace it. Actually, I know I can ace it. You're not actually learning in that environment. You're not actually learning something new for yourself. You give this opportunity to someone else. And in that particular case, it was going out to Texas and selling a product that we'd built. But there's plenty of other cases where I've gone, like, there's this big scary problem that I think I can do all right at, but actually there's someone else chomping at the bit for career progression and development. I'm actually giving that over, and a lot of leaders I see don't often do that. They want to pick up something as a ball and fix it, and this is a problem, and it's like, and they love fixing the problem and scooping it up and having that problem to solve, and because that's the thing that gives them satisfaction. Whereas me, it's like seeing other people thrive and giving those opportunities to other people. But through that process, I think it's important to be there. It's like, you don't just give it them and run away, and it's like, oh, well, it's your problem now. You're there as a coach and a mentor sometimes. You're there to create a culture where it's okay to fail, and create that culture. Like, if you haven't got that culture, like if they feel like they're going to be pointed out as, like, if they get something wrong, like, well, you're setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, one of the most powerful things you can do is believe in someone, and also be candid for the people where you don't think they're going to be able to manage. Like, you actually don't think they've got the skills to deliver something. Just be really candid with them in the feedback about why you've not given them that opportunity. Don't avoid those difficult conversations about why people aren't progressing.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And can you share any resources or learning paths you think developers could take to expand their knowledge? And, maybe you can maybe speak about any experiences you've had where this has maybe worked quite well as well within your teams.
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, it depends on your organisation, depends on your team. I think finding a mentor is one of the first things, and the mentor isn't necessarily someone that works in your organisation, because they're going to be subject to the same cultures and the same biases and whatever that you're working with. There's plenty of mentorship platforms out there. There's plenty of people really willing to help you succeed in your career, and you can be really open and candid, whereas like you might not be able to do that with a mentor at your work. So ADP list I mentioned before, that's great. Mentored a few people around Teesside on that platform, as well as Iran and Saudi Arabia. There's a platform called 1 Million Mentors, which is not tech specific. It's more of a you sign up for 12 months, you have an hour every month, and you talk about sort of general growth and stuff. But that's all free. There's Women in Tech mentorship group. So the first thing I'd say is probably reach out to a mentorship platform. In terms of roadmaps, we're experimenting with Roadmap SH at the moment. So it basically it's in Git, and it's basically it's an open source project that have created these roadmaps for different tech routes. So like web development, I want to do web development, I want to do Android, I want to do mobile development, and it shows you these like from like the basics to like getting really into these niche frameworks and tech stacks and whatever. And it's really it's been contributed to open source. It's not just someone who's invented it. Those are really nice. If you look into, especially if you, so I mentor a lot of people from doing boot camps and things like that. And the biggest question that they ask is what's the technology that I need to work on next? And so giving them something like that, giving them, this is what the world think you should work on next. What do you think? That's really nice. Pluralsight paths, if you've got Pluralsight subscriptions, they're really useful, and you can create your own customized paths, but actually the ones that are out of the box are pretty useful. This is a very privileged thing to say, but like, do what you love. Pick out your love. One of the biggest questions one of the most frequent questions that people ask me is, what tech stack should I use, or what tech should I learn next, or what project should I learn next, and what should go next on my GitHub profile or whatever. Say, well, do what you love, because and sometimes you do genuinely need to learn another tech stack, but especially if it comes from the boot camp route, you usually don't. What you need is to be able to articulate something. You'll be able to need to explain what you've done, and if you've done a project that is close to your heart, that matches your purpose, that matches something that you really want to do, you'll be able to better explain it, and you'll be better understand it, and actually you'll be more resilient when things go wrong and things fail and things set on fire, and you'll be more open to actually just sticking through it and sticking at it, and then you'll be able to explain that in an interview environment. I would hope that people can talk to their manager as well. Like, this is like, that can have an open conversation. Your manager will like it because it'll show ambition. Well, sorry, I'm making an assumption there. Most managers would like it because it shows ambition. And just to have an open conversation, like, look, this is where I want to get to. Where do you think I can be? What sort of tech route should I be on? And I'm hoping that those conversations happen often.
Yeah, I find that in working in the tech space, there are a lot of people are focused on progression, and they're always thriving to get better. And I find that what I really enjoy about the industry as well is how collaborative everybody is. So it doesn't matter if somebody works for a certain company. When running the meetups, there's so many people who are willing to give their time to share sort of projects they've worked on in their own companies or in their spare time, and there's a real thirst for knowledge and a thirst for getting better at what you do. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy about working in this industry as well, which is good to see.
Yeah, and the Northeast is great for that. Teesside, Newcastle, whatever. All the companies that I've talked to are really, really willing to engage in that sort of professional development space.
Yeah.
I guess just to pick up on something that you mentioned there, like progression and better. Those are words that, like, so I would always ask, what does progression look like for you? What does better look like for you? Because actually, some people don't know what better looks like for me. They just see a progression path in their own company, and that's not always what better looks like for them. They just want to stay at that company, and that's fine. But actually, is that serving you? Is that what better looks like for you, or what better looks like for the organization? And just spending the time to dig into, your purpose and values, but what progression looks like for you, and what good looks like for you is gonna be able to drive you and your North Star and whatever. So
yeah, great. So gonna change tack slightly now. So I work with a lot of developers at all levels really, but typically work with a lot of junior developers, mid-level developers, and senior developers. So I wanted to speak a little bit about interviews and help developers get a little bit of an insight into some of the things that interviewers would look for. So I guess one of the first questions to ask is, what qualities do you tend to look for in developers during the interview process?
Yeah, and this is another "it depends" question, because different companies want different things, different cultures and organizations and whatever. Some companies, I've worked at a lot. Some companies just want you to come in and be able to crack code out and be. I say just. That's not like I'm diminishing. Like, that's really important. That's really important, especially to some company like that you can develop deliver high quality technical code, and it to work, and every time. And actually, you're not going to be talking to very many people, so your people skills are probably a little bit further down the list. And I guess, like I say, it depends whereabouts you want to go. And so for those types of companies, like, probably technical tests are more prevalent and more important or whatever. Whereas if you're hiring for culture and value fit, I don't like that word, culture, but value fit, and a people first approach, you're looking for different skills. But I guess the things in common that I look for are sort of curiosity, and a growth mindset, and to a lesser extent, sort of emotional intelligence, or how well they understand themselves, how well they understand their reactions to situations. So we'll ask behavioural questions around, like things like, how do you deal with conflict? And, well, not necessarily behavior, like, tell me a time when you've dealt with, depending on the culture and the organisation, is what they're trying to get out, is like a power struggle with, or a difficult conversation with a manager, or a difficult conversation with a colleague. Telling me about a time where you've dealt with stress. Love that question. Just giving that question away, because we'll always ask that question. And it was my colleague that actually found that one. But that's really interesting to figure out, like, do they understand when they get stressed? Do they understand what triggers that? Do they understand how they react to that? And that's all part of the emotional intelligence piece. But the curiosity and the growth mindset is, like, how do they deal from failure? What have they learned from failure? Have they ever learned from failure? Do they understand what resilience is, and, like, to keep powering through? And I guess so those are the common things, and we'll tweak it depending on what sort of company, what the company's looking for. But I'm always interested in, like, whether people can tell a story. What I don't personally find massively helpful is when people turn up to interviews and they just read the CV. Or they not read the CV, but they talk about, like, these are the places that I've worked, and these are the tech stacks that I've worked in. Now, actually, some people like that. Some people just want to hear that, especially if you're hiring contractors. That's it's a horrible mindset to get into, and thankfully I haven't hired many contractors, or I haven't had to switch my mindset. Sorry, to change into that, to whatever. But I want to hear a story. I want to hear how that thread works through. I want to hear, like, what I want to see you get passionate about some of the projects. I want to see you have an angry face when you talk about the projects that you hated. That's what I'm looking for in candidates.
So from that, I get a sense that you like to find out like the emotions the candidate has experienced or is feeling, and would you sort of maybe look at that in terms of how that would either fit in with your team, or whether if you were to coach them, develop them, give them tasks, how they'd react to that?
Yeah, and and again, it depends on the organisation. But for instance, Waterstones, pretty, I would say all of our consultants, all of our software developers have to talk to clients. Clients externally. Developers generally have to talk to stakeholders, but external clients and they are all representing a consultancy in Waterstones, and so them to be able to articulate, a techie thing that they've done into this is the value that we've delivered. That's required for all of those developers. So I'd want to talk about, tell me about the value that you've created on doing, this particular project down here. So I'd pick a project maybe on the CV, and that's important. Whereas if I was maybe working at another organisation that was really high pressured, really intense, had very, very set deadlines based on financial year or whatever, I'd be very interested in pressure and stress and how they deal with stress. Now, it's important to say I would not put them into a pressurized, stressful situation in an interview, because that's not a real word. You just don't do that. But talk about examples in the past where they have been stressed, and talk about, because actually you're not going to thrive in this environment where it is, really high pressured. So I guess it's another it depends answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What questions do you typically ask developers regarding their problem solving skills and how sort of they approach software challenges?
Yeah, problem solving. It's more about. So I'm. It's been a long time since I wrote any code and I did any technical questions, and I guess we're probably going to talk about technical tests and things like that in a sec. But I'm interested in the how do you solve the people problems, like how do you, because everything's a people problem really. Like I say, talking about conflict, talking about stress, talking about those kind of problems are the things that I'm interested in. And then when the technical, and that's what we talk about first. And then when the technical thing comes along, then it can be specific, drilling into specific projects and talking about how you solve those. But it's really quite generic, and it really quite depends on the thing. But like I said, the senior devs and the architects will drill down into those specific technical problems. But I'm more interested in the how do you solve the people problems.
Yeah. So I guess just on that then, what are your thoughts on technical tests during the interview process?
I have mixed feelings on dev tests. I mean, I've seen some shockers. I've heard about some shockers. You're trying to simulate the real world. You want to see how they're reacting and like how they would code in the real world. And in an interview, it's not a real world scenario. The tests where you give them a thing and I've even seen people sit in the interview with the candidate. Like, this is not a real world. Like, you wouldn't do that. Well, you might do some pair programming, but at least you would feel safe with the person that you're pair programming with. And it's like people looking over the shoulders and typing and no internet. It's like, I can't remember how it. Everything is the internet. A Stack Overflow. I couldn't do my job. And so as long as you're trying to replicate the real world as much as possible, as long as you have the internet. I mean, that's a must. Don't look over people's shoulders. The type of test that I like, I mean, it's done the rounds over the last 10 years around T-side now, so everybody who's interviewed for me will probably know this test. We've given a problem to people. This is a problem. This is a real, it's not a project, but it's a thing. You build a map or whatever. It's maybe using a library that you're probably not that familiar with statistically. it doesn't matter if you are. We give them the problem for the candidate to understand the problem rather than do the solution. And we're really clear on, like, actually, it doesn't matter if you get to the end. It doesn't matter if it works. We'd like it to build. We'd like it to build by the end of it. Like, that's kind of it. Like, doesn't have to run, just build. And as long as they can articulate the problem that they've worked through, and we really clear at the end, is like, we're having a conversation, we're having an interview almost at the end of that test as to what you would do differently, as to what you understood about the problem, as to what libraries, as to what you would go, what sites you would go on to learn a little bit more. Like, you know, it's a springboard into another conversation. If you're just giving someone a test and you get to the end of it, it's like, right, bye. That's not a real world. That's not a real world scenario. So I have a real problem. I saw someone talked about a chess problem, and like they had to solve the minimum numbers of moves that a knight could make towards the queen. I'm like, oh, that's assuming people can play chess. That's a really privileged like exam question to set. Like, how many people you're excluding for, like, you don't. Anyway, so I've seen some horrors. So I can, you know, it depends what you're hiring for. It depends on the organisation. Depends whether you're hiring a contractor or a permanent role. Like, I don't think have I ever interviewed for a contractor? I'm not sure, but I'm not sure how I would feel about giving a contractor a technical test, because you know, you would go on trust in those situations. So, you know, there's very well respected, and probably if I was hiring a contractor, I'd ask someone who has worked with that contractor before. Almost, you sort of got more luxury, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess it depends. But I have mixed feelings about dev tests.
Yeah, I've seen, for example, exercises such as like battleships exercises, but then I've had conversations with hiring managers and the recruitment teams about diversity, for example. So if you have people from different backgrounds, different countries applying, who's to say that they've played with battleships or they understand the rules, or similar to chess, you know, again, could be seen as quite a privileged place to be. I mean, I can't play chess, so I wouldn't have a clue where to start with that. So yeah, I understand that. So it's a challenge. So what would you say are maybe some of the more sort of common pitfalls or struggles that you've seen developers come up against in interviews?
Yeah, for me, not preparing. It's very generic, isn't it? But not reading the website, like,
quite
that's
basic.
a biggie.
Yeah,
and it's more popular than I'd like. It's more common than I'd like. Or reading more than just the front page of the website. Doing a little bit of like digging work. So at Waterstones, we're very, very value driven, and we put a lot of pride into our values, and we live our values. And if I ask a candidate, tell me about our values, and you can see him clicking through the website, like on Zoom or Teams or whatever, I'm like, like they haven't got that far. It's only like two clicks into the website. But we really put a big deal on it, and you know, if any of the videos that the PR, the marketing videos and stuff, like we talk about, you know, people first, and if people say the words people first, then I know you've got that far, because that's the first value. That's what we talk about a lot. But it's I mean, you know, a long time ago, we were hiring for graduates at Tracercore, and you know, you get people phone up. It's like, do you know? So first of all, Tracercore, you know, you see that word written down and play with Tracker. Is it Trackercore? Is it Tracercore? Like, if you've not talked to, but actually, it's only one video that you have to watch to figure out how you pronounce it. So if you get candidates coming in to Tracercore and saying, "Is it Trackercore? Is it Tracer?" Well, do you watch any videos, or did you know? That shows to me that you actually didn't do your homework to try and find out how you pronounce Tracercore. And you know, there's one graduate that phoned. It was like, okay, so do you know what we do? It's like, I haven't had time. I'm gonna have to stop the call here, because actually I've got another 100 applicants that I need to work through, and we've got quite a strict criteria. And like, actually reading about the company that you're applying for is quite a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think not preparing happens a lot more than I would like. And we talked about storytelling earlier. When like I hit on it earlier, but if people just read through the CVs and like these are the things that we've done and these are the skills that we've got, especially for permanent roles. Like I'm talking about permanent, like we're going to hire you and we want you to be here for as long as you possibly can. If you think that we're only hiring you for your technical skills, like that makes me sad, and that you can't tell a story. And we encourage that. We encourage you to tell a story, but if they can't tell a story, then that's probably a mistake.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. And finally, to do with interviews, how do you feel developers can best showcase their appetite for sort of continuous learning and sort of their passion for tech?
Yeah, I'll let you into a secret. Not all developers have a passion for tech, and that's okay. It's all right. And yeah, it's really attractive to have a developer that has a passion for technology in the home and whatever. But it doesn't matter as long as they understand the continuous improvement bit. As long as they do have the commitment learning, the growth mindset. Some people are just really good but don't have the general passion for it. Like, I didn't really like. I mean, I did more than the average person, obviously. Still did a little bit in my own time, but the passion for tech now, like I probably lost it a little bit in that I've got more passion for people who have passion for tech. So that's all right. But as long as there's that continuous commitment to learning, that's what I'd look for. GitHub profiles are all right. Like I wouldn't look for numbers of commits or anything, like little blue boxes. But the types of if people can talk about some of their passion projects, that's quite a nice, because again it's adding and again not everybody does this, but it's adding to the story that you can tell. It's adding to those little, like, actually I was just really interested in this thing. This is a pet project. I'd like to talk about this like as a showcase, and I wouldn't expect a showcase or a to talk about everybody's GitHub profile, but actually if they're really passionate about talking about it, that's a nice little tool to have. It's a nice little tool in your arsenal, but like having your GitHub profile and your CV is kind of a good idea, as long as like when I click through it and I don't see 100 like sort of half done projects or whatever, or the same projects that everybody else does. Like pick 4 to profile, and then that you're telling me that you want to showcase. That's a lot easier for me, because I'm not going to go through all of those little things. I'm not going to, So is it reasonably helpful? But yeah, as long as you can put a story together of like what if you're not passionate about the technology, whatever, as long as you're passionate about something, about continuous improvement or a particular thing, then and you can tell a story. That's what's important for me.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's a great thing to take away from this conversation is storytelling. It's something that I've not thought about a lot when I've spoken to developers when preparing them for interview. So that's going to be my big takeaway from this conversation. So thanks for talking about it. So I guess like plans for the future. What are you ideally looking to achieve? What does the future look like for Mike?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've told you my purpose, and as long as I can keep fulfilling that purpose, I have a real passion for the tech scene in Teesside. So I do what I can. I'm not really sure what I can do, but I do what I can to sort of improve it. That's why we have the Northeast Dev Community. That we actually haven't done an event in Newcastle. We've done quite a few in Teesside. We've done quite a few in Durham, and it's that sort of northeast thing, trying to bring it a little bit further down into Teesside. So whatever I can do there. Plans for the future. I've got a coaching course coming up in August. It lasts about 5 or 6 months. It's a big deal for me because it's recognised by the International Coaching Federation. So that'll be another badge on my coaching medal badge. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to soon.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of the mentoring platforms you use, and are people able to like contact you through LinkedIn and places like that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sure we'll share some links or something.
Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best way to get in touch with me. I am on ADP list. I'll share that link as well. Yeah, I think I'm available Mondays and Thursdays maybe. And there's like 2 slots to pick from. It's all my spare time. It's all synced up with my personal calendar, so you're not invading on my personal space or anything. So yeah, that's that, and I've got a website that I'll probably share that I do like 2 or 3 blogs a year or something that talks about things like this, emotional intelligence and purpose and things. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Mike, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.